Hello, everyone. It's great to be back after a long break and another episode of FireTest Laboratories Pickup Vlog. And today I welcome Greg Hand, Director of Fire Stopping Center. Greg has a quite diverse experience and a long way before he decided to establish the business, which will deal further on with the pacifier products. So he started with HVAC mechanical services, design and specification. Then he went offshore and he was involved into a textile manufacturing business. He was also involved into the businesses which did the interior finishes for commercial and domestic use. So many things, and even did some manufacturing ventures with a Chinese representative. So quite fascinating. So Greg and his partner Graham have a quite amazing range of brands within the distribution range, right? So they are Trafalgar, 3M, Protecta, and even some of the products under Firestore brand. So Greg, thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay, nice to see you.
Great. So my first question will be specifically around the products you choose to distribute. If there is any internal procedure or maybe some kind of a checklist with a certain parameters which you go through and put the ticks into the squares to say, yes, that's a good product and we'll take it aboard. So, and what are the specific parameters which are quite, you know, the most critical for your choice? So how do you make that decision?
Mainly, we have to make that decision based around the fact that the brand or the products or the systems are all complying to New Zealand standards, and that's the most important thing. We find that when we first started in the business, we had two brands. One was CSD and the other was the 3M brand. And we found that both those brands had limitations as far as the New Zealand standards, New Zealand and Australian standards were concerned. And we were unable to always satisfy the requirements of the specifiers or of the industry, or in reality, the New Zealand Building Code. And the temptation was always there to try and stretch the rubber band, as it were, to stretch the testing data to cover our local requirements. And that was not the way that we wanted to run the business. We wanted to have a business that we could offer systems that enabled the users to get it right first time. And to do that, they had to be, we had to supply fully tested systems to the 1530 and or assessed to the 4072. And they had to match the requirements of the specifiers or the building detail to be accepted. So we found that the offshore brands, you know, and to use 3M as an example, were not always that keen to do special testing just for the Australian New Zealand market. In their case, a lot of their testing is done under the American testing systems, which are not as robust as our testing system requirements are locally.
They don't comply, right, with Australian New Zealand?
They don't comply, no. The testing standard doesn't comply. So we can't use that data to assess to New Zealand and Australian standards. They do a fair amount of testing in Europe, which is acceptable locally. The data is acceptable locally, but at the same time, we were struggling at times to offer systems that did comply. And so what was happening was that, and then what happened was that we were getting approached by other manufacturers from offshore looking for us to distribute their product. And I think the reason for that is the fact is that they recognised the fact that we weren't single brand, that we were able to offer the technical advice and assistance to the customer base here. So we now have something like 5 brands. On occasions where we see that there is a system that has some requirement that we can't satisfy from offshore, and frankly that the business case for it stacks up for ourselves, we will have design and have systems tested and assessed to the AS standards locally, and they fall under our own Fire Stop Centre brand. So,
right. So you talk a lot
really
about testing. If this is something which is in the center of your feasibility study or a checklist once you start to consider the products, I mean the testing regime.
That's right. Yes, we've got to be able to establish that the systems that we're offering have been tested, you know, in that particular situation, and the data will allow it to be matched to the New Zealand building systems, because all the New Zealand building systems here in Australia, and even there is some differences between the two countries that are different. So it's important that we have it matched, and it's a requirement of the building code. Right. So testing is absolutely essential. Systems don't necessarily, or not, there's very few systems, in fact, that require one product. It's usually a combination of product, and it's how those products react together and react to the you know, the construction material or the detail that they're going to be applied to. Right.
Fascinating. And the next question will be in regard to the installation, because I guess, and you know that very well, more than me even probably, that yes, the product can be great and tested and will fits perfectly to the project, but there is installation part, right? And what I've heard in the industry, talking to fire engineers and main contractors and some other stakeholders, so the main complaint is always about installers, and the main they are blaming all that those people who are installing out there on site, that they do not a very good job sometimes, or maybe often. So what's your opinion on that? Why do you think it's happening?
Well, I think that a lot of that criticism of the installers is often pretty unfair, because really? Yeah, because really when the if you go through the process of specification, the building consent is a requirement to have the detail of the passive fire in it. By the time the building gets built, and that can be sometimes a number of years after consent is issued, the whole design of the building has been changed. The detail in the building has changed. Those changes are always a requirement to get an approval of those changes, but very little thought is given to the passive fire, and that is never included, or doesn't appear to be included, in the changes that have gone through, you know, as you go through the process. And so what happens is that the installer will be asked to quote on a specified system in a particular building. He will do that. He'll arrive at the building and to find that the system, and if he's got some knowledge and some experience, that the system doesn't match the detail of the building and it doesn't comply. He's then in the position to, he needs to, what he should be doing is going to the authorities and saying, this doesn't comply. And what happens is, of course, he is then challenging the specifier's knowledge or the specifier's expertise. And he's the one that ends up in the middle of sometimes a very elongated, expensive negotiation and discussion. Right. And he's the one that costs his money. That it costs. In fact, everybody else is sort of, you know, zeroes in on the installer. If he just goes ahead and follows the specification, and is the incorrect system for the particular job, at the end of the day, somebody, a construction inspection or a local authority inspector will not approve it. And what happens is that the installer ends up copping the cost of the change, and and doesn't get any compensation for that. So it's all part of the training of the installer. Most of the training locally seems to be about how to apply a sealant, how to secure a wrap, but not giving the installers any understanding of what they're actually trying to achieve. If you ask an installer about what does he know about a fire cell, he will actually look at you and his eyes will more often than not glaze over.
Right, so they have this small part of the job which they concentrate on and don't see the big picture. So that's why they don't understand sometimes that they need to check this or that and to make to come to some kind of a conclusion, right? And that's why all the problems appear. That's what
right,
you're trying
exactly
to say.
Right. We do face-to-face training with installers. And our training is basically starting right back at the fire report and explaining to them why the fire report has been written, has been presented, and what is the background to that and what that is trying to achieve. Then we talk about fire cells in a building and where they're likely to find them, and that there are sometimes vertical fire cells as well as horizontal fire cells. Sometimes there's several fire cells on a level of a building. And then we talk about the confinement of the fire within the fire cell. So that what they're trying to do and what they're doing is making sure that any of the walls and floors and ceilings that have been breached by a service needs to be sealed up in such a way that it completely confines the fire within that fire cell, for the period, depending on the rating of that fire cell. And we find that once they understand that when they get to site, they're actually looking at something and saying, well, this doesn't feel right, I'm not doing it right. And the other thing is, quite frankly, is that they're doing this particular penetration here, and there's a penetration further down the wall or whatever, but they haven't had any instructions to do that, and they'll just do what that is and walk away and leave the hole on down the wall.
Yeah, at the
because
end of the day,
they don't even understand.
Right.
And we find once they understand it, then they're looking and they're being very aware, and also they take much more pride in what they're doing. They're going to the building supervisor and suggesting that there's extra work that needs to be done before if they're going to end up with a complying building.
Right. It should be a teamwork, so they should be, empowered to make sure that the building they are working on is safe for people who will be working or living there. Correct.
That's right. Yeah.
Actually, my next question was about what you're doing to support those installers whom you sell your products for the installation, but you actually answered this question just right now. So do you see the difference? I mean, time goes by and I'm sure there are some installers who keep buying from you the product. So you're saying they feel the pride. Is there any other changes after the fact that you educate them and you support them, from this perspective where you just describe the whole idea of pacifier protection and educating them? Do you see any other difference in their performance on site?
Yeah, certainly we do. A part of the training is training of the use of our of the website, the Fire Stop Centre website, which has all the systems and all the backing documents available there, publicly available. So that what we find is that the installers, that if they do come across a problem or they do come across something that they're unsure of, we encourage them to go into the website to have a look to make sure that the system that they're using is the correct one. If it's doesn't appear to be the correct one, they can very easily sort out a system that is, in their opinion, the correct one. And from that site, they can talk to the fire engineer or whatever, and they can immediately send from the site they're working on the details of the system that they're suggesting is the correct one. And if they can get the approval of the fire engineer, then they can immediately go ahead and put the correct system in, not take a photograph and go and talk to the site supervisor and so forth, and just, it just turns into that elongated process where they can do that immediately. And on that site is that available to everybody is all the backing documents. Every backing document for each system is available on the site. So that if the fire engineer or a specifier or a building inspector is not aware of a system or is not familiar with it, they can immediately go in and look at the documents, download them, whatever they need to do, and assure themselves that the system that's been proposed is the correct one, and it's got all the backing documents there.
Perfect.
So, our attitude is, get it right first time. And quite frankly, that if we don't have a system on the site that has the, complies with all the AS 1530 or 407.2, we say, look, we can't do it. We don't have to try and stretch the envelope to try and make it fit. We're better to say we can't do it. And at times that's where your services, become quite important, because we can, in conjunction with the fire engineer or the building owner or the developer, say, well, look, we believe that we can suggest a system that would work. We don't have the data to back that up. We can't give you compliance, but we can get it tested relatively quickly.
Yeah.
We can get it tested relatively quickly and to satisfy everybody, because there's a huge liability, and we have to make sure that we're saving all the people involved in the industry from that liability, because once the council has signed it off, they're liable if something is not correct. So they've got to be assured that the system is right. The person who's specifying it has to be assured that it's right, or be very comfortable with it, not just trust somebody's verbal assurance.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have the situation where it's already done on site, something goes wrong and it's installed improperly, so we also can help with that, where they bring the system here, build it as on the site, and we can test it. So you don't need to take it out, or you don't need to redo it, right? So that the lab can help, just to cut the cost on amending something. So it's also possible. Where it's possible it doesn't work as well, so then yes, you don't have any chance. But if it does work and you can avoid all this destruction, so it can be also a great variant.
Yeah, that's dead right. And that's that's a service that's going to be extremely helpful.
Absolutely.
To us all.
Yeah, sure. Greg, amazing interview. Thank you so much for your precious insights. And after this episode, I'll try to interview someone from the installers, and we'll see their point of view. And I think it can be a very good discussion and a very good, collaborative to give some clarifications to the industry, what's happening behind the scene, Yeah,
Right.
Thank you for that. Thank you for contributing. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Pleasure. Thank you. Bye.